it's Haley, and today I'm going to be sharing my recommended reads for dystopian. So I do have quite a few books to talk about today, so I don't want to waste too much time on an intro, but I did want to give you guys a quick little crash course on dystopian literature just in case you're not familiar with it. So dystopian literature is basically literature that takes place in a world that is the same as Earth, or at least resembles it, but something has happened where everything has gone to crap. So everything is the least ideal that it can possibly be, if you will. So utopia is the opposite of dystopia. Utopia is the world in this ideal situation. It is kind of like a heaven sort of world where everything seems perfect and nothing can go wrong, whereas dystopia is everything is completely wrong, everything is crap, and it basically seems like where we're headed with the upcoming US election. But I am not going to get involved in US politics right now. I'm going to stay in my happy little home in Canada and stay far, far away from that. But dystopian literature has been around for a long time. I'm sure you're familiar with classics like Fahrenheit 451, 1984, Brave New World. There are tons of them, but I'm not going to be talking about classics today or adult dystopians. I'm going to be talking about YA dystopians. So YA dystopia kind of started with The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This I'm not going to include in this video as a recommendation. Well, I kind of am, but people are very familiar with this story, and I wanted to talk about some lesser known dystopians. So this kind of started the craze. Whether you've read the book or watched the movie, I'm sure you have heard of this story, and I do highly recommend it. It's a very scary dystopian because it just seems a little bit realistic. Like, it doesn't seem like it, but then at the same time it does. So I do recommend it, but like I said, I want to focus on some lesser known ones. So I'm going to get into that now, and if I have any reviews for any of these, I will link them down below for you guys. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first dystopian that I wanted to recommend to you guys is Unwind by Neal Shusterman. This is the first book in the Unwind dystology, so there are 4 books, I believe, and I have honestly only read the first one. So dystopians are generally, in YA at least, they are generally parts of trilogies or series, usually trilogies though, and to be honest, most of them I've only read the first book because I'm not really captivated enough to want to continue with the story, or for whatever reason. I really loved the first book, but I just haven't continued with it, and that's the case with this one as well. So Neal Shusterman wrote this one, and then a while later he decided to write more, but I was just so enthralled with this one that I didn't want to continue with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but this takes place in a world where abortion is illegal and people have to have their children, and then their children will be repurposed if they don't want them anymore. So they can be repurposed and their organs will basically be given to other people. It is absolutely creepy, and this book creeped me right out, but it was so good and such a great, unique dystopian. Next up is Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. I'm pretty sure that Whitney over at Witty Novels would have killed me if I didn't include this in this video, but there are 3 books. This one's a trilogy, so we have Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and Ignite Me, which is the best one, objectively speaking. But I really loved this this trilogy. The writing style is very unique, so you have to kind of get used to it. It's very metaphorical and very kind of whimsical, which is really interesting for a dystopian. And this one deals with a girl who she has been imprisoned for all her life, and she can't touch people. So if she touches someone, then she will kill them. And it follows her story, and it's really cool. There's something about kids with powers that I absolutely love, and this series does it very well. Next up is actually an adult dystopian, but I don't think it really is just for adults. I think it could also be YA, and that is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This is one of my absolute favorite dystopians. It follows a world where the dystopian factor of it isn't really the main focus. So I was kind of hesitant to include this in this video because like books like The Selection, that one is technically dystopian, but that's not what I love it for. But this one, I think that the dystopian factor does add to it a lot. So basically the world has gone to absolute crap, as it does in dystopians, and this is where they live, in like these towers, because there's been so much pollution, so much garbage, and it's just a terrible place to live. And the boy, the main character, is escaping to a video game because the creator of this really cool video game has died, and he's left this Easter egg in there, and if you find this Easter egg, then you get so much money and you will be able to basically escape the like terrible place that you're living in. So he's going after that. There are tons of 80s references in this book. I haven't read it in a while, but I really do want to reread it because it was such a fun ride. Next up is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This is actually, it's kind of like a borderline fantasy paranormal dystopian dystopian. Dystopian is technically a part of the sci-fi genre, but I find that this one leans more toward the fantasy or paranormal. So it's a world where everything is like, I say it's a dystopian because the world is technically the United States, but they've been changed into something else, and it's a world where there are all these monsters, and the monsters are terrible, and it's told in dual perspective. One is from a monster, and the other is from a girl who is kind of a part of the empire, if you will, that's leading the world. So they're two really badass characters, and you get to see them kind of interact, and I found this book to be so interesting. I loved the writing, I loved the world, the monsters were so interesting to read about, and I just found it so inventive, and the characters really just came to life, and I think for that reason it was a really successful dystopian. Next up is Reboot by Amy Tintera. I don't like zombies, and this book is kind of zombies because basically people, when they die, they will come back to life and become these like superhumans who are used as soldiers, and the longer that you're dead for before you wake up again, the more powerful you are. And this main character here, she was dead for 178 minutes, so she's either the second most powerful or the most powerful person who has like zombie, if you will. I forget what they're called, but this book was so interesting. I found the concept to be really cool. It's actually a duology, and I haven't continued with it yet. I probably won't since I read this so long ago, but I do highly recommend this one. It is very, very interesting, especially if you like zombies, which I don't, but I can see why you would like this if you did. It's not as gory as zombies, but it is still really cool. Next up is Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. This is kind of described as the Hunger Games meets Pokemon, and it honestly is like that. This is either duology or trilogy, I'm not too sure. I only read the first one, but I did really enjoy it. The girl, the main character, is joining this race because her brother is really sick, and the award for winning this race will be a cure to whatever ailment that anyone has. So whoever wins it will get the cure for whoever they're trying to heal. And along the way, they have these Pandoras, which are little creatures that will help them, and I really love this book because it had like the Pandoras. They were really fun to read about, but at the same time it was pretty brutal and it was hard for me to read at times, but I did see how this is kind of in the vein of the Hunger Games, so if you like the Hunger Games, I think you would really like this one. Next up is the Darkest Minds trilogy by Alexandra Bracken. So the Darkest Minds is the first one, and then we have Never Fade, and then we have In the Afterlight, which is the third book, which, if you didn't know yet, the titles make a sentence, so it's the Darkest Minds, Never Fade, and the Afterlight, which I think is awesome. But I read The Darkest Minds and I fell in love with it. It's kind of like X-Men. Like, I haven't ever seen X-Men or read any of the comics or anything, but I do know the general idea of it. So there's been this plague that has ravished the world, and those who, I don't think that's ravaged, not ravished, ravaged the world, and those who have survived it, they get these powers, and they're basically put into concentration camp like places because of the powers that they have, and they're treated terribly. And this story is about some of the people who were in those camps, and I think that the synopsis that they give on like the inside flap of this book is a little bit too much, so I would just go off of like what I told you, kind of just go into it knowing it's kids with powers and they're treated terribly, and I think you'll really enjoy it. The less you know, the better, because you get to learn about this world, and this is actually becoming a movie soon. They've I think it's like actually going to become a movie. It's not just a deal, because they have been announcing casting, so I'm really excited for this one. Next up is the Legend trilogy by Marie Lu. One of the problems with dystopia, and I think that's why it's kind of falling out of favor recently, is because a lot of them are very similar, but this one is completely different. This one, it has two characters, and one of them is part of the regime and the other one is the most wanted criminal by that regime, and you get to see the two of their worlds meeting and how they interact, and I think getting that dual perspective honestly just set these books so far apart from any other dystopians that I've read, and I absolutely love them. So the first book is Legend, and then Prodigy, and then Champion, and this is one of the ones where I have actually finished the trilogy, and I highly recommend all of them. Next up is Divergent by Veronica Roth. Now, there are very mixed feelings surrounding this trilogy because it is quite similar to The Hunger Games. It's not quite as brutal as The Hunger Games, and I do see where the similarities are, but I actually really enjoyed this trilogy, and I did also enjoy Allegiant, so there are very mixed feelings about Allegiant, but the first book is Divergent, and then Insurgent, and then, like I was saying, Allegiant, which a lot of people are not big fans of, but personally I kind of liked it. it was a bold risk that she took, and I think that's why I like this trilogy so much, because it starts off being quite similar to The Hunger Games and honestly pretty predictable, but I think that Elysian just set it apart because it's something that you weren't honestly expecting, and I really liked that, and that's why I kind of like this trilogy. It's about factions, and different factions have like different, I don't know, things that they're known for. I can't think of the word right now, but there's Abnegation, which is known for its selflessness. There's Erudite, which is known for its knowledge. There's Candor, which is known for honesty. And then there is, what's it called? Why do I always? Dauntless, which is known for its bravery. And it's all about this girl who is being sorted into those factions and where she fits in, or if she fits in. Then finally, I wanted to recommend The Ugliest series by Scott Westerfeld. This is one of the first trilogies that I went out and actually bought myself, and it's definitely the first dystopian that I ever read, and I just loved it. I fell in love with this world and like just how weird it was and how crazy everything was, and it's very scientific, but I really liked it, which is odd because I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi now, but I did really love the series. I love the concept of it, and the whole thing is just so cool, and I haven't read it in so long that I can't even really describe it to you, but I do highly, highly recommend it. So those are all of my recommended reads for YA dystopians. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Dystopian and I have a really love-hate relationship because I find that a lot of times dystopians are all really similar, but then sometimes you get like really engaging characters that still make a similar book like stand out. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what some of your favorite YA dystopians are, and before you ask where The Maze Runner is, I wasn't a big fan of that book because I knew it was happening from the beginning. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!